Let's do it.
Well, it's Wednesday and we're back on.
We're here. We're back. It's exciting.
So it's another wonderful day. And today you're going to be stuck with just Nicole and I because we want to come on every so often, just the two of us. We do have some really phenomenal guests scheduled, and we're just going to surprise you every week by whoever shows up. But we also want to come on and we want to give you our thoughts because of our own expertise. And today we're going to be talking about life after divorce.
Whoa.
Okay, so we're both in that same spot right now in life. And it's not so bad. So I want to talk to us, to everybody out there who is possibly either maybe going through the divorce syndrome of, oh my God, what am I going, how am I going to make it through, and all the rest of this stuff. And I want to tell you, no matter how hard it is, you will make it through. And we've got a lot of tidbits we could share, but that's another show. And we're going to talk today about divorce and about moving through after the divorce. So getting your own shit together, let's say. And then we'll go through and we'll even talk on, we're not going to talk too much about parenting because that's another show that we actually do have somebody else set up who is a professional in that realm as well. Although Nicole and I both are parenting, have done parenting through all of this as well. But today, let's talk about you just moving through.
And Glenda, it's so weird because in looking back, I never saw myself as a person that was divorced. I just thought, I'm going to get married. And I thought the fantasy, the fairy tale, the happily ever after, the fabulous kids house, blah, 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 blah. Well, then that's, sock in the gut. You're like, oh man, you find out certain things and you can either work through it or you can be like, I'm not putting up with that. I don't like this. There's no going back, divorce on. And that's where I was with it. And I'll be honest, it scared the hell out of me. It really did. And it was really strange because I've never really been a person in my life that was scared. But this one took it out of me, and I really didn't know what to do, what to say, or where to go. And it was the best word I can think of is intimidating. That word, that situation, and the fact that I was going to be divorced really intimidated me. And it took a lot of work, Glenda. It took a lot of work to even talk myself into moving forward, even after some of the things that he had done that I felt were just, it was not a situation that I was willing to forgive. So I knew I had to do it.
So that's the whole point about this show. It's about, I want you to understand about things about yourself. So, when we get through that divorce, then we start feeling that we've been beat up. We feel as though we've been knocked down. I feel like I was through the war, because, my divorce lasted longer than my marriage. I was being shoved into court for every little thing. He had a mandate to, and he was silly enough to put things in writing, but that didn't actually do any harm to him. But it was all about trying to destroy me emotionally and financially. And, I spent over $200,000 in legal bills, but somehow I paid it all off. But it was after what happened. It was after about what we need to do with ourselves, because what happens is you get through finally the divorce. And, in my day, there wasn't a lot of things going on after divorce. I actually made myself my own divorce party because I really felt, and, I love
You
a
get
good.
a hat and a whoopee thing, and woohoo! I'm
Well,
divorced.
I just felt so grateful that I've actually made it through because, I wasn't getting any documents signed and I wasn't getting in there. And I went, shit, I'm just going to make my own party. And, crazy enough, I did it. And, now they're much more common. At that point, people thought I was actually really crazy, but, you kind of celebrate. So, you know, problem is divorce tends to be very much like a marriage because it's a life altering event that happens in our life.
It really is. And unless you've gone through it or you're going through it, you don't realize how impactful it is, because it makes you question a lot of things that you thought you had the answer to. You really felt secure in your knowledge, secure in certain things, how you feel about yourself, how it's going to affect the kids, even down to pets. But man, when you've got everything on the table, and we started out with divorce attorneys, but oh my gosh, like you said, $200,000. So we finally just got a mediator, which he was very good, very smart, was cut and dry. He'd been a divorce attorney for 25 years and saved us a lot of time and trouble. But, you have to sit there, across the table from someone that you said I do to. And even though he's done things that he just pissed me off, that irritated me, that there's no excuses for, you do have that, like, man, that's the father of my kids, that, all the vacations you went on, all the good times kind of pop into your brain at times. You're like, but I knew I was doing the right thing. I really did. And so that's how I felt about it. And I just kind of had to put some things aside. And I wasn't as smart as you. I didn't really put on a business hat because it was a little too emotional, but I knew that I had to get through it. It was something that I had to do for my soul. I had to do it for myself.
Okay, so I'm going to be straight up and honest because really that's how I am, and this is part of what taught me in life, right? Now whatever on my mind, I just say it now. I don't hold anything back because I look at it as I have nothing to lose by being straight up and honest. My first divorce cratered me. No doubt about it. I had the hardest time in life. I had hard coming back. I got my friends drop me. It's a very different situation. You start to have to learn that there's huge changes that happen in your life. First of all, you got to start learning, if you ever have, that you're going to have an empty house now. Before you had kids, like for me, it was everybody's kids, and my house was just a going concern. But then all of a sudden, my house was empty. I was a 24/7 mom. So I didn't know what it was to be having time off. So getting used to eating meals by yourself. I never ate a meal by myself. That it was a time, all of a sudden I went from having the busiest household to all of a sudden it's empty. And I remember even the first weekend where the kids went with their father, I didn't know what to do with myself. I actually cried. I was totally not prepared. Nobody prepared me. Nobody talked about it. It was just things that didn't make sense for me.
And I was very lucky, Glenda, because I was the antithesis of that. When we moved out of the house, I still had, my youngest was going to be a freshman, so I knew I had 4 more years of high school to get her through. But it was at a time where my oldest daughter was struggling with a few things, and she asked if she could move back in. And I feel like it was a gift from the universe, because I was with them like for the next 3.5 years, and it strengthened my bond with them. It helped me have a sense of humor, a sense of belonging, and a
Yeah.
sense of, what, I still, in certain instances, I need to take care of these girls. And I had to do it for them because I didn't want them to know that I didn't want him to see me stay with the man that had done that to me, and there was cheating. But it was honestly, and I remember thinking this at the time, and it's not often you get these epiphanies or these thoughts inside your head, but I had gone from 4,000 square feet to 1,000 square foot rented apartment. And when I walked in there and had my girls in there, I thought, you know what? This will be some of the best times of your life. So absorb and inhale every moment you're with them. And I've never thought that way before. I mean, sometimes you'll look after the fact and think, man, I wish I could do that again, because that was really cool. That was really fun. But I knew in those 3.5, 4 years, I knew that was going to be looked back upon. And it is and was some of the best times of my life.
So, but we got to be real of really what happens to us. So, when you first go into it, you have a complex amount of feelings that are thrown together, from something of rage, sometimes feeling of betrayal, loss, anger, maybe even just a sign of feeling of relief. We have all these feelings that start to come up with us. And sometimes we don't know how to handle it. So, if you are going through and you're having these feelings, first of all, you're normal. I hate to tell you, you're
Absolutely.
normal. But second of all, what you need to do is you have to start to find ways of getting rid of some of it. Because here's the danger. When you have some of these feelings like anger and rage, when your kids go to do something and you're being now you're in the single parent stand. You no longer have anybody that you can say, I got to get out of this house, unless you get a babysitter or you have some wonderful neighbors or friends. But things are going to happen, and then you're going to start yelling at your kids. I did.
Mm-hmm.
It was only one time where it came up very early in my thing, where when I was yelling at my son and he started yelling back at me, and I said, "Why are you yelling at me?" And he turned at me because he says, "Because that's all you do now, is all you do is you yell at me." And
Ouch.
yeah,
Ouch. That's a moment to remember.
well, that was my shift.
Mm-hmm.
It was that moment when I felt like I was hit, by a bowling ball, because I didn't recognize what I was doing.
Wow. And coming from your kid, that's where your heart is. So that had to be like one of the knife wounds, that had to be tough.
But it hit me. But it from that moment on, I had different check-ins with myself.
Yeah.
So, my release was, so find releases, so that when you're feeling all this anger and issues, first of all, we'll talk about, because this is where you're at your prime of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. And
Learning, how do we forgive ourselves? Because you
oh,
know what,
the
part
key.
of this whole thing is learning. They say you have to forgive that ex, that person that there's so much, excuse me, but a lot of bullshit that happens through that whole time. And somehow you have to learn to forgive, because you have to let go.
And that's the most important thing. And when you realize the importance of forgiveness, that it's not necessarily making excuses for them or condoning their behavior, it's literally to get those emotions and those feelings out of your body, releasing that so you don't have to carry it with you any longer. It's so important. And people don't even realize you have to forgive yourselves, but you do have to look at yourself, because if you're in a marriage, that's two people. And there's it goes both ways.
And we all screw up through that time that we are in our marriage. Like, even if, let me tell you, because the second time I went through this, I went through two relationships, and the second time, he was cheating and doing stuff. But here's the thing, even though that was why I decided to leave, it doesn't matter. There were things in the relationship that I was responsible for. So hear that. We all have something that we have responsibility that we need to claim, because otherwise you're not going to get through this.
Exactly. And you know that it's so interesting too, because one of his major complaints was I spent too much time with the kids and he didn't get any attention. Where at the time I thought, well, that's really childish, you know, to have that emotion. And then came the but I was here first. And I'm like, I understand that, but you know, the kids can't get to school by themselves or they can't do this. And I made all kinds of excuses. And basically, if we maybe, I don't know, I'm not going to look back and surmise anything, but could I have done different things? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because we have to be real, you know, women, we have our own needs that we need, but men also have their own needs. Men need to feel that they are, you know, stroked and feeling like they're there to help us and secure things. They have their own feelings. And, you know, now I know a different way of forming in relationships. But back then, really, I was the same way. It was all about the kids.
Yeah,
And
and it's really interesting that you mentioned being needed because that was one of the things he would say almost forlornly is that, you know, no one needs me. No one needs me because I had two girls. So, you know, there were pageants and yeah, one was in sports, but there was a time when I was a stay-at-home mom.
yeah.
And so I oversaw everything. So he could just come in and it was all pretty much done, you know, for the most part, but he felt unneeded. And I think that's a real desire of men is to feel needed in a relationship. And he didn't feel that. And I didn't address it. I thought, oh God, that's just ridiculous. You know, what do you mean you don't feel needed? But that was a big one.
And we have to learn that that's what happens is in the need of relationships that you're in now. So sometimes, you know, if you're trying to even revive an old relationship or a relationship that you're in that's not, you know, you got to make sure that, you know, we all need things. We all need to be touched. We all need to be talked to. We all need everything. So it's really important that we hit on those. So, but going back, because we're falling off topic because that's what we do. You know, one of the thing when you're going through after your divorce, first of all, come to the one thing: practice the acceptance that it's done. Stop living and stop, you know, like, yes, we got to look back to say, you know, where did I go wrong? What can I learn from what I've done wrong so I can build myself back up? So I can, when I meet that next person that might come into my life, into my heart, that I can make sure that I can learn from it. So, first of all, by practicing the acceptance that things have happened where they are, we never assumed that we're going to get involved in a divorce when we get married, but it has happened in my life, and I have to learn now that I have to accept it and let it go. And
And that's a hard reality too, you know, because I don't know how long you were married, but I was married for 25 years. And it was like, my gosh, I've spent so much of my life. And acceptance was a real big issue.
yeah, because we sit back and we always go through the things. If only I had, maybe we weren't so good together, you know, but or how could I have thrown it all away? But stop. Once you're done, you're done. Instead, just look at okay, I am now where I am. Yes, I have had and did my own faults into it. Now start looking at yourself and saying, okay, how can I now move forward?
Yes, and that it does fall right back onto you because you have to be open and honest with yourself. And that's always one of the hardest things we have to do is looking at ourselves, admitting some things, accepting our place in it and accepting where we are now. So that's a tough one, you know, and it's only when we finish, if we do finish it, that we can kind of get a grasp on where our path might lead us from there.
So even though we're going to have, you know, like we talked just about a few minutes ago, a lot of things like the pain, the betrayal, sadness, fear of where you're going to go. Who's going to want me now? Hello, I could tell you everything that you probably think. The disgust of all that went on, the anger, hostility, rage that you might be feeling. Some even feel grief of loss because you did lose something. A marriage is a divorce, is something that's died. Your relationships died. And here's the big one that I felt very much so at the beginning and through the years is loneliness. It's something that is really there because now you don't have that person all of a sudden that can go out with you. You know, you've got to look for somebody to go out and have a good time with. All those type of things. But we need to feel those things before, we need to feel it so that we can also learn to go through it and past it.
Exactly. Exactly. And see, I'm still going, I wouldn't say I'm going through it, but I'm really not at a place where I want to date right now. And I think that has to do with getting to know me a bit better because who I was, who I can morph into, and who I truly am. I think unless I really get to know me, love me, and accept me, you really can't go into a relationship without knowing who you truly are because you don't really know who you're going to match up with if you don't know yourself.
So that's really an important point. And we need to understand who we really are. Because here's the thing, okay, I'm past that point because I've done the work. I've spent, I'm now close to 9 years since my relationship has broken up. So I've been doing the dating scene and all that. And we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But you need to start really figuring out, because if you don't do the work, where that relationship fell short the last time, it's going to fall short the second time.
Absolutely.
Because we start attracting the same types of people that we dated, that we didn't work it out. Hello, let's talk about that. Do you want to go through the same shit over and over and over again?
Yeah. And it's true. It's absolutely true. And, as I looked back at my marriage and past boyfriends, I had a type. I had a type that every single time it was like just bands that, drew them to me. But it wasn't them, it was me drawing that type of energy in. And it didn't work, Glenda. That energy did not work.
It never does. Because if it didn't work the first time, why would it work the next 25 times? It's not that. And that I'm not the same person today as I was in my 20s and 30s even. I'm a very different person. Are you the same one?
As I look back, if you would have asked me 20 years ago about me, I would have been like, I don't know this person I am today. I had no idea she existed. She's very different from any entity that I've ever known. So it's so different. I'm calmer. I don't let things bother me. I take ego out, and I respect me. I listen to me. I listen to my inner voice. I listen to the whispers of my soul. I don't listen to outside things or what people think I should be or should do. I listen to my inner knowledge, my higher wisdom. And it's made a tremendous difference in how, not just how I would look at someone I was dating or had a relationship with, but it makes me look at my whole life from a different viewpoint and perspective.
So important to get through. Now, how do you get to that point though in life?
I did a lot of work on myself, Glenda, and I knew that I needed to because I was so hurt and just it was like I took blame for everything. It's like, what did I do? Why didn't I do this or why didn't I do that? And then as I learned different healing modalities, as I learned meditation, as I learned sound therapy, as I learned my mirror work, as I learned how to be real with myself and look at it as it's not to put yourself down. It's not to take blame. It's literally What did you learn from this? I've always said there's no failure, there's only feedback. What did you learn from this? And I took it on more as a life lesson and something I didn't want to do again. And that's why I went backwards looking at the people I'd either had relationships with, dated. And I even, at one point, the only person that I ever got a hold of was someone that I had dated in high school. And at that time, we were both single. And it was like the guy that I was like, oh my gosh, if only.
Yeah.
But it was the same type of energy as every single one of them. So of course it didn't work. And it took, I will tell you, we are going to be works in progress until we leave this earth. That's all I can tell everybody. We morph, we change, we live, we learn, and we become. And so with each step along the way, I become someone different or more aware or more cognizant or more kind. But it's always a work in progress. And if you would have told me when this first started 10 years ago that this was the end result, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have thought, no, there's no way. But at this point, as I sit here talking to you, having forgiven myself, learned to love myself, learn not to blame others, not to even blame myself at times, and learn that, what someone says about me is about them, not me. I just know that as much as I've learned, I have more to learn, and I know I will continue to morph throughout this journey, and hopefully make myself a better person than the one I was yesterday.
I love it. So I did the same thing. I do a lot of meditation, and I still do. I learned the very hard way about listening to that inner voice, because believe it or not, that inner voice, like crazy things that have led me to some of the most amazing miracles in my life. And not that I knew where I was going. I just followed everything that was being called to me or being told to me, and I would just go forth and say, oh, okay. And it was these things that you need to constantly be doing. Mirror work, for those who don't know about it, we won't go into too much, but please, if we say anything and you want to reach out to us, please, you can send messages to either one of us through Facebook Messenger, and we'll be more than happy to help you and communicate more information to you. But since we have a lot of time restraints here, we're not going to go into a lot of things. But mirror work is very, very powerful and really brings out a lot in you. To believe in you is really what is important. So when we talk about a lot of things, and this will be for even going forward, about the fact of feeling your things, and about the other important factor is setting boundaries.
Oh yes. Oh my. Mm-hmm. It's something that I think as women, we've been so conditioned to say yes or take on things that we don't want to do or
Right.
take on too much. Learning to say no was a big one for me, not just with like volunteer work or being at my kids' school, but literally with friends. With friends. It's like I had to set so many boundaries with people that I was interacting with. And I didn't even realize that, maybe I was being used or being pushed into something I didn't want to. No, this two letters, no, N-O. And it took me a long time to learn to say that.
And it's okay. No doesn't mean no forever. No can mean no, not right now. No is it's really not convenient for me. Maybe down the road. There's so many different ways of that you can say no. But remember, it's got to come down to you first. And I even do that with my own kids, because it can't be all about everybody else. It's really got to start with you. And that's let's put that out there, that you have to learn that when your cup becomes empty, you get drained, and that's when things happen in your life. That's when you get breakdowns. That's when that overflowing of overwhelmness starts happening. And then from all of these things, you end up in depressions and so on. So just be careful and learn that if it doesn't work for you, then just say no. And you don't owe an explanation to anybody.
And
So,
that's a huge point, is your no is enough. You don't have to tell them why. You don't have to tell them what you're doing. It just, not tonight, not today. And it's done. It's really interesting, that divorce thing. People all of a sudden see you maybe a little bit weak, I felt at times. And so my no to them, those who I still have said no to and respect it, are my friends. Some have left. And if that one word can make or break a friendship or relationship, you're probably better served to have said it now than let that linger into a longer time frame.
totally. So, if you've started doing the work on yourselves, let's say at this point, and you're starting to be able to do things like, let's be real, go out with yourself. And instead of doing anything, just go out with yourself and have a dinner on your own. Have you done that?
You know what? I enjoy my company. And I always tell people, I read someplace one time, and this is what was like an epiphany to me, is that if you're alone and you're lonely, you're in really bad company. I'm like, ooh, I better think about that one. And I've always been pretty independent. So it doesn't bother me to go to a movie. It doesn't bother me to go out to dinner. That doesn't bother me. Now, I don't drink anymore, but I probably wouldn't have gone to a social setting by myself. So have you done that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Tell me about it. I want to hear about it.
Well, no, I'll do little things by myself, and I don't even hesitate anymore because I have this thing in my I have my own kind of weird sense of humor, and I always say my house is really busy. You've heard me say this because I have me, myself, and I to deal with, and then there's Google and Surrey, and then sometimes a little crazy comes along, and we're all having a great time here. So, you know what? I have taken myself out for dinner and I have ordered a martini and have always have a book on hand just in case. I'm a very avid people watcher and I love watching people, but it's not nice to, I try to teach my children this. It's not nice to stare. So, in the meantime, if food isn't around, and then somehow or other, I end up striking up conversations with people, and so it turns into you have conversations and, if I even go for walks and I end up in conversations because if anybody will talk to me, I'll talk to them. I love
me, myself, and I are very friendly.
Yeah, we're very friendly people. And so we get out and we go out and I will go. I will even go to a party now by myself. So the other things of what I started to do, first of all, so initially when I went out, like I said, at the beginning, I found it really hard. I wouldn't go to a restaurant by myself. Many, many years ago, I was traveling a lot by myself. It was part of my job. And I was traveling all around Canada. And at that time, I spent a lot of time by myself because it was company policy that I was not allowed to be mingling with my staff. And, I could take a manager out for dinner, but for the majority of the time you couldn't. So since I was traveling, I had no choice, but I didn't really like it. And I ended up always ordering room service, but that's not a good way. So what I started doing when I was on my own is, first of all, I started going to meetup groups. Now, meetup is everywhere in the world now. So you can go online and go to meetup, and I would find groups of things that I'm interested in. So, at the beginning, I started also getting involved in doing a real estate investing. And I started going to meetup groups where they were all talking about real estate, whether it was investing and things. And I learned so much information. And I began to also get connections with people who were also in the same type of things, looking to invest or doing renovations. And I actually got a hold of a lot of contractors and things like that through it. So meetup groups have a great thing. And even, from time to time, I okay, so one of our dear listeners here, Claudine, is saying that she finds it difficult at times to go out alone. That's why I'm saying take a book with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's difficult, but if you try it, the first time it's difficult, talk to the waiter, talk to the person that's sitting you down, and just saying, is there an area so I'm not put right in the middle of the room where everybody else is around me? Maybe ask to be sitting on the outside of the room instead of in the middle of the room, so you don't feel like all eyes are on top of you. There's all these different little ways of, and then you can just find your own little comfort zone. Here's
And,
another.
and you're right, Glenda, it does get easier each time you do it. And one of the things I learned, and I learned this from as I was sitting there by myself, someone else was sitting alone. And I thought to myself, well, it doesn't bother me that they're alone. So they're probably not, they don't think I'm some strange person sitting alone. They don't care. No one really is fixated on you being alone. It's just, that's what you're doing at the time. And the more I did it, the easier it got. And you know what? I really enjoyed it because I didn't have to like call someone up, say, okay, can you meet here? Or can you meet there? If I wanted a nice lunch or a nice dinner, I just did it.
And the other thing, like, is if you can do things like finding groups where there are, and you might be able to meet other single people, because when you go through a divorce and you're finished and you're starting your life over again, the biggest problem is a lot of times all your friends are all kind of married with kids.
Yeah, they got a lot. I still have many of my friends. I'm trying to think of someone who's divorced, and I don't. They're all married.
So it's true that you do have to sometimes find new friends, because your girlfriend and your husband isn't necessarily one to start to connect you and bring you along with their husband. Now, I do have a couple of my closest friends that I can go with them and their husbands, and we're just happy as can be. But it takes a very special, strong type of woman to do that.
Exactly. And it's so interesting because that having had that done to me in terms of cheating or whatever, that is not something I would even think of ever to do. It's just not something that's within me that could ever be done. I know some people, they're like, she's divorced now, can we go out with her? But bear in mind, not everyone wants your husband.
And actually, it's true. I lost a very dear friend, and I guess she wasn't that dear, that she told me that she didn't feel comfortable anymore since I wasn't married. And that's another whole story. Like, really, I don't want them, but whatever. Andrea says that she recently started going to places alone. Good for you.
Yeah.
And her church started doing connecting of groups, and so she signed up to that. So here, perfect scenario.
Perfect.
Right? Go to find groups. And I only am just mentioning meetup groups, but there's tons of groups out there that you can connect with like-minded people. That's why I suggest finding interest groups that I went before my accident. I had signed up to a lot of different hiking groups because I love to hike. So, I wanted people that were physical, because I don't want to be just going out for dinners. I like to go and do things. So, just look at things. Now, let's talk about before we get too far out, because I don't want to not get onto this subject. Let's talk about online dating.
That's the one I'm really interested in, because for me, both my girls are like, Mom, you got to get on these sites. And I'm like, what are they? Well, you swipe. Like, what do you mean you swipe? I don't want to swipe. No, you've got to. So they hooked me up with, oh my, I don't even remember the names of them. It was like right when my divorce, because I wouldn't even until my divorce was final, even though we weren't living together, I don't know why, but I couldn't do it. I thought when my divorce is final, then I will consider it. It just was something within me that I had to do for my own good. And but Bumble, I think, was one. Does that sound familiar? Bumble and
So first of all, congratulations. And I don't think anybody should be going out on dating when they are still going through the divorce. You really gotta feel the pain. You gotta get through the pain. You gotta get through all the bullshit before you start already seeing somebody else. And I have my own thing. I would never date a man who's not totally divorced. I don't want to hear about his what bullshit he's been through in his life and not. You get through your stuff first. Like, that's just how I am. And I don't want to hear about that because I do my own work. I don't need to hear about other people's. If I'm going to hear about other people's, it's going to be from my coaching, not from a guy that I might be dating. And that's what ends up happening. Right. So yes, there's Bumble, there's Plenty of Fish, there's all the sorts of. Facebook has their own dating things. And you know what? They're all an opportunity. So yes, I've done online dating. And yes, I have actually had phenomenal results. I've met some really nice men on online dating. So first of all, let me explain. Know who you are. Know what you want.
so important.
So I had this woman reach out to me and, Glenda, can you help me find somebody? I'm looking for a man. I want who's tall, dark, handsome, really put together and all the rest of it. And I don't mean to be mean, but I told you I'm also not, I'm a no bullshit person now at this point in my life. She wasn't that way in herself. How can you expect that you're going to attract a man who is tall, dark, and handsome when you're overweight, don't put yourself together, and you're none of that?
I couldn't agree more. And you know what? You call pride of ownership begins with you. You have to take pride in who you are, what you can show other people, how you show up, not just with the way you look, the way you act, the way you walk, the way you talk. Be real, but love yourself enough to show up in such a fabulous way that no one will ever forget who you are. Go in with grace, leave with grace, leave an impression, and have them say, wow. And that's enough. Wow. Who was that? And it works. You have to love yourself enough to show up in that type of way.
That's it. We only have, I don't know what it is, a couple of seconds before that we can, that we make our first impression.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are not standing tall, if you can't walk into a room with a big smile on your face, dressed nicely, and I'm not talking about you got to start wearing designer clothing. You can be dressed appropriately with, spending very little, but there's ways of dressing and there's ways of dressing.
Absolutely. And the smile, it's your best makeup.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Well, when you smile, your eyes automatically light up.
You sparkle.
Yes. And we sparkle without our glitter even, because our smiles and our eyes. And when you smile, your demeanor will change. Even if you don't feel like it, all of a sudden those muscles are working. You're like, you know what? I got this. This is okay. I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
And in your posture and, you can just float if you have a smile.
I love it. So true. It's part of your makeup that, you know what? And if you don't feel like smiling, if you just start putting it on, it's funny. After a few minutes, you feel a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It does. There's just a shift in your consciousness. And if you walk in and dour and slumped and cranky, they're going to see that. So if you're going out in public, would you like that to be your parting glance, or do you want to leave with the smile? It's really simple. And think about it. Would you want to go talk to someone who, was slumped over, had a pouty look and a scowl on their face?
Yeah.
I won't approach him.
That's
No
it.
way.
And you know what, especially if you're out and now we're out and about and we can meet people easier. And, it's that passing glance that you can do, that little smile that you can smirk at somebody and then kind of move away and then look back at them again and your eyes can meet. And all of a sudden, when you can smile again, it's a welcoming. You're saying to them, welcome, come on over.
It's warm. It's a warmth, it's a blanket, it feels good, and we all know that. There's nothing better than to walk up to someone, even if it's an old friend, but you're greeting them with a smile. It's so it's so cozy. It's so cozy. And so that's one of my first things that I tell my kids: just have a smile on your face. If you don't like them, walk away, but be kind, have a smile, go in with a good attitude,
Goes
and
does wonders.
the difference is amazing.
So the next part is if you're going to be taking pictures of yourself, you know what? You want certain things. You want a man who has a bit of class, who is a professional. Now, I don't know. Maybe you want a man who doesn't have class. Okay. If that's the case and that's what you want. No, no, no. I can't put what my desires are on somebody else, nor can, we can't do that to each other. But I'm just saying, okay, depending on what your own desires are, a picture does make or speaks 1,000 words. When you're having your pictures done and you want a man who might be a little bit of a classy act or somebody who's well put together, that's what your pictures should say. I've seen a lot of the women's pictures that are on the dating sites, and they're wearing stuff like maybe bikinis. Sometimes they're even going where they'll have a drape over them, or even some of them are even naked. If that's what you want, that's what you're going to get. So if
Mm-hmm.
you dress accordingly, you can dress sexy. Dressing sexy doesn't mean that you got to bear it all. Actually, when you show less, you bear more. Because,
Exactly.
right, it all leads to the imagination. But if you can hold yourself well, take lovely pictures, different outfits, go out for a walk, have going out one day and having your friends look at your dressed up, have them take a picture of you. Those are the pictures that you use. Show ones that have energy. Remove the sunglasses. Guys, if you're listening to this too, so many men wear sunglasses. You know what? For me, a smile and eyes are the most important things.
Windows to the soul. You're going to see who they are. And one of the things I want to tell you: do not use that old glamour shot. Do not use. I've seen glamour shots, and it's like, no, 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 no. You've got to be yourself anymore. You really should have gone through enough to where you're so comfortable with you that if you present you, you're going to find the right draw. You are absolutely going to find. And I know I've got different photos. I've got more casual photos. I've got branding photos, and I've got just candid photos of what I like to do outdoors, whether it's kayaking, paddleboarding, hiking. So I am several people in one. It's not fake, it's not phony. It's just who I am based on where I need to be or what I'm doing. But they're all me, and they're all unique, and they're all sincere.
And that's the key word, sincere. So be yourself. List the things that you like to do. Don't list things that you never do. Talk in the form of what you actually looking to attract. That's part of it all. Now, I'm going to also put out, a lot of people meet a lot of phonies. Yes, there are a lot of scammers. But here's the thing. The whole idea is either to get on a call with them with FaceTime as soon as possible, or you meet up for a coffee in an area where there's a lot of people around. If you go for a coffee and it doesn't work out, you know what? You can have a 10-minute coffee and you're gone. It's really simple. And, and if it's somebody that you really enjoy, then you can go take that coffee and go for a walk as well afterwards. So it can either go one way or the other. But remember, ladies, gentlemen too, but mostly this is really common with a lot of the women. You know, if a man is asking you in any ways, and there's been a lot of things on there with scammers and that, if a man ever is asking you for money, he's not there, and he's not going to fall in love with you in the first few minutes or the first few talks that you talk to online. If he's falling in love with you right away, then you should have this thing going off in your head and saying, warning, he's not the one.
Exactly. And it took me so long to fall in love with me that if someone loves me instantly, I'm like, I don't think so. And they're everywhere. You know, they're everywhere. We see them on Facebook. We see them on Instagram. You know, you're going to see them on the dating sites, and they're hoping for that one fish that just, wants any kind of love in any way, shape, or form so badly, they're going to fall for it.
So it's very important that you realize that first of all is loving yourself. Second of all, start really feeling that comfort of getting out there and starting to get out. Go for a walk in places. Go into a restaurant, and if nothing else, go and start having a coffee by yourself. That's a great way of getting out into restaurants, by the way. Go out and have a coffee, even during the day, and take a book or take some work with you and go in and do that, because it helps lead you up. It's like building that muscle.
Yep. Muscle memory.
Right? Because when you get used to some things, then all of a sudden it doesn't seem quite as bad as it did.
And it's just stepping over that little line of fear. Your stomach's in a knot. And the minute you take that step and you're there, it's like, this isn't so bad. I can do this. And the first time is a little tough. The second time, piece of cake. One time, one step over that fear.
That's all it takes. Try even changing some routines in your life. Sometimes we get in place, and because we do the same old things, and then we complain that we never meet people and we're lonely. Try changing yourself up a little bit. I did this, like I live not too far away from a lovely mall. And what I started to do in the mornings is instead of having my coffee in the house, I did this right at the very beginning, is I started going out for coffee in the morning. It's crazy how many people go out for coffees in the morning. I never realized it. When I was working from home, I didn't think anything of it. But when you're going, all of a sudden you go into a restaurant and you sit there and go get a paper or read from your phone, there's so many people having morning coffees out.
What about the grocery store, Glenda? Have you ever had any luck in a grocery store?
No, but I have known a lot of people who have actually met in a grocery store.
Really?
Yeah, I've never, I guess over feeling the watermelons or the oranges, I've never found true love through that.
Yeah. Squeezing your fruit, Glenda, it just didn't work for you.
But who's to say? If it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Exactly.
It's just being out. And yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. I'll still talk to somebody when I'm squeezing the lemons or the oranges. It doesn't matter. I'll still smile at people when I'm walking past them, because I'm always trying to make somebody else feel good. So
that's all it takes too. I mean, we become a society of not making eye contact when we walk right by someone. And I always tell my kids, hold the door for someone, just smile. You don't even have to talk. And if they don't respond, that's on them. Don't feel bad, don't feel hurt. Keep doing it, because you will find the right person eventually that will thank you, want to know who you are, how's your day, and you've just made their day. Really easy.
So just learn that there's so many different ways. The whole idea, what I really want to come across as we're coming down to the hour, is the fact of, if you're not out there, if you're not sort of putting yourself out with different types of people, going out for a coffee, meeting friends, going to even places on your own. You can't sit home and expect that somebody is coming to knock at your door and come there with the glass slipper and asking you to try it on. It just doesn't happen. And here's the other thing. If you can even get out and find another friend, well, like, and if you're a woman, you finding a girlfriend, or a guy friend, or I have a lot of guy friends that are just that, just friends. Just get out and be out. Why? Because the happier you are, the more it's going to show on your face.
Absolutely. And make happiness a habit. Make it a habit. It's 21 days to a habit. And I can't think of a better one than happiness and joy. And just that feeling that life is good. We've gone through some tough times the last couple of years. Why wouldn't you want to be happy?
And why wouldn't you want to do something for yourself? When you go out on a date, if you meet people, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have to become your best friend. They're not going to have to become your lover, or you're going to have to get married. It doesn't mean any of that. It means that you just go out to even meet a new person, to talk about something that's a little different than what you might have been exposed to previously. The most important thing, right, is just building you. This is also a muscle all on its own. So with that, Nicole, what do you have to put, some words of wisdom that we can put out there for everybody?
Glenda, over the years, what I've learned is that you are what you make yourself. You create your happiness, you create your joy, you create your path by creating those things. And it's actually, for me, it's easier to walk that path of joy with my head held high and a smile than it was to walk that path of unhappiness with my head hung down, not making eye contact, and feeling like I almost didn't have any right to be happy. That is a universal law. You have the right to be happy. And if you remember how important you are and love yourself enough, you can walk such a beautiful path and never have to look back and wonder what if.
I love that. And I'm going to read something to you that I have for today. It's called Appreciate Everything. On this day, affirm, my life is perfect. Appreciate everything and everyone in your life without doubt or expectations. Your goal is to learn that the way you set change in motion is to be blessed and felt with gratitude for even the most difficult parts in your life.
Beautiful.
And that's how we just have to take it. Your life is perfect. So stop trying so hard. It's time to just let things flow.
Surrender.
Thank you. Surrender.
Surrender. It's beautiful.
Thank you today for everybody for listening to us. We are always on the hunt of looking for conversations, what people want to hear, people if they want to come on the show. We're open to everything because that's what it's all about. We just want to be real. So thank you so much.
Yes. And we want to get real with our audience too. So they're very important to us.
So thank you very much for coming on today. And please, if you're watching this for the first time and it is by replay, just hashtag replay. And if not, please comment anything. And please just love us and share us. That's what it all is. Thank you so much.
Goodbye, everyone.